Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to On the Bright Line podcast, Tales from Recovering Food Addicts from the perspective of a physician, a therapist, and an off-the-wall storyteller. We are not affiliated or endorsed by Brightline Eating, and all content presented in this podcast represents our personal opinions and does not represent medical, nutritional, or psychological professional advice. Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of On the Brightline podcast, hashtag Zoom edition. Here's the three of us sitting in different rooms in the state of Washington, all around the Puget Sound. Anyway, today we are going to talk about change. Nobody likes change, right? Or maybe they do. I don't know.
There are some people that like change. It's genetic.
It's genetic. I feel like we talked about that before, haven't we?
Yeah, we did.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was like, we've talked about people who like change versus people who don't.
Yeah.
Anyway, maybe we talked about them. It was an offline conversation. Was that a podcast conversation?
I don't remember. I'm sure someone will write in and tell us.
I'm sure probably someone, Tony probably will. But anyway, but yes, so we are going to talk about change, and I think we're going to talk about it in a lot of different ways. One of the ways we're going to talk about it is how when you remove food chatter from your life and you are working your program and your food addiction is something that maybe is a little more under control, that it brings about change in that it opens up your life for other things, maybe some additions, maybe some subtractions, all those sorts of things. We're going to talk about change in that, if those that are following along in the episode, there's been some major life changes in my life. And we talked about that in the last episode. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what's changing and what's my life moving forward and the podcast changing. And we're going to tease that out and not talk about that till the end.
Right.
So I think the first thing I want to talk about, and maybe whether we've talked about it or not on the podcast, let's talk about it anyway, because I remember this conversation we were having, and I just want to be reminded that there are people who are genetically destined,
predisposed to like change, right? So think right, and the way I heard it explained was, think about our ancestors. They went, get on a ship, go somewhere where there's no established structure and buildings and society. Let's go. That sounds great.
So and then there was the people that were like, I'm not going.
Right.
That sounds scary.
So a lot of us that live here in, North America, the United States, are ancestored from people who like change. No?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting sociological thought experiment, right? But I think in general, people, change is hard. Any change is hard. I mean, good grief. Like when you told me that you were doing a diet that was no sugar, no flour, I was like, no, I can't do that. That's too hard of a change.
Right.
Yeah. Too big of a change.
Too big of a change.
Yeah.
Can't do that. Mm-hmm. So I think that, I think we just want to have a discussion about that there is good change there, and that changing your whole entire life in the way, we have through BLE, that there's also very positive change that comes out of that. It's not that there's not any negative consequences. And I'm not saying negative, not even, maybe negative is a bad word, but just that there are changes that happen that can be really, life affirming, life, empowering changes that come from this. And I think a lot of people, especially myself, when I first heard about BLE, and I'm like, you want me to not have sugar, not have flour, weigh and measure, and only eat during meals. Like I can't just eat when I want to. And that's not going to be the most repressive thing of my entire life, and that I will never feel free again. And to be on the other side of all that, and to sit here and say that I am so free from that. And not that it's not ever hard, and I don't want to be sitting here and be like, oh, it's so easy, because it's not. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying there is so much freedom in knowing that there is limitations around how to control my addiction now that I never understood, never had on board before, that now my brain is free to think about all the other things that I want to think about. Mm-hmm. And as we talked about in the last episode, I was numbing all of my marital issues with food. And that's how I was choosing to cope with the fact that like I was not in a good place. And so having taken that numbing away led to the change of me ending my marriage.
Mhm.
But that's not the end of the story. Right?
Yeah.
But we don't want to talk about that right now. Let's talk about
Okay.
your changes, Bonnie.
I think the biggest change for me is I am not willing to sit unhappy anymore.
Mhm.
What does
When
that
I
look
was a
like?
lot younger, I was in a work situation that was so miserable. It escalated to a point of such misery that I would sit in my car and cry before work to get psyched up to
Yeah.
go into work. And, I had, as we talked about in a recent episode, a catastrophe that caused me to move away suddenly and get out of that work environment and change. And I just remember thinking like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, like I had the power with me all the time.
Yeah.
I didn't really, why did I stay in that? Why did I stay in that? And I think I was so deep in the food then. Oh my gosh, I was coping. That was the nascent years of Starbucks, and I had so many, frozen sugared coffee beverages. I had like 3 or 4 a day. I would send people out to get me another
Thank God,
one.
because otherwise Bonnie and I wouldn't have
I
met.
never would have met you. Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, I was so in the food back then, so in the food. That's all I could think about. I was just coping with the food, miserable, coping with the food, miserable. And I just think like I compare that version of me to the version of me now. Like I'm, as I look at what I'm doing with my career and what I'm doing with my family, and what I do with my time, I am not willing to sit and be uncomfortable and do something that doesn't align with my inner self anymore. You know what I mean? I make choices now based on like I'm fully present to my authentic self. And so, like I'm hitting a point where, as I think about my career, I think about that. Like I won't let myself get put into a situation that I'm not comfortable with. Again, with family things, I just won't. And I don't numb out with food anymore. So I'm just fully present making those choices. So the changes that I've made in my life professionally and personally are possible because of how much more I am in my centered self. And I'm just physically feel good. I emotionally feel good. And I approach challenges now from a balanced mind where I just wasn't before.
Yeah.
Robin, do you have any
Um,
thoughts
I,
on change?
I think for me, change has not been something I've shied away from, but it's definitely been something that has made me question like, oh my gosh, can I do it? Am I strong enough to do this? Right? Strong enough, brave enough, wise enough. And I think it's definitely, the past couple of years, I've had a lot of changes. I've, got divorced. I moved out to the Pacific Northwest, and it made me, I really had to learn to be willing to lean into some vulnerability and ask for support, right? To reach out to you guys and say, hey, I need, or I have a question about, or I'm not sure what to do about XYZ, and to be willing to go, yeah, that there are so many things that I don't know, right? And my joke is always that life is like a game of who wants to be a millionaire, because the beauty is I don't have to know all the answers to every single question on my own, that there are lifelines that I can use, right?
You can phone
And
a friend.
you can phone a friend, right? And sometimes it's being willing to say, oh, I know which friend I should phone for this question, right? Like, I messaged Meagan today, like, should I buy these shoes? Are these shoes cute or are they ugly? And she's
They were
like,
cute.
they were right. She's like, they're
Her instincts were accurate. They were very cute.
And I
right.
think too, like that's the beauty of BLE too, is the community,
Yeah.
right? And so, you can lean into the community for support instead of leaning into food. And, and that leads to changes in, in your connections, like if if you used to be very isolated, you're now a connected person, and I've seen people go through the BLE program that just, would describe themselves. We're in a study group together, and there's somebody that just describes himself as terminally shy, but yet she just exudes joy and comes to every meeting and contributes and connects. And it's so interesting that she describes herself as a very shy person. And yet I just always see her as this vivacious, connected, bubbly human being. But that's the power of what the program has done for her, I think.
Yeah. I love that.
And I think that's, just the reality of making major life changes and doing big work on yourself. And so that is, as we talked about in the last episode, that is, what has brought me to, where I'm going, what I'm doing in my life, is that I realized I was extremely unhappy, and for a long time didn't think that was a reason to, change anything about my life. But coming into a clarity of mind of like, okay, unhappiness doesn't have to be the way that I live for the rest of my life, right? Like there can be more to my life than that. And now that I'm not numb with food anymore, I want that. Like I crave that, right?
And you want to be connected to people who are also not numbing with food.
Absolutely. Yep. Wow. Way to, just totally pitch that up for me. So what Bonny is trying to get me to say, and what probably a lot of people who listen to our podcast know, is that I am now in a relationship with someone who is also in BLE. And that has been so tremendously amazing that I can't even begin to describe all of that. So that and the funny thing is that we met in a BLE support group meeting.
Right.
So talk about a very meta situation of like, you're healing yourself from your food addiction, and then you meet, the love of your life in a BLE support group meeting. So for those that don't know, Patty and I met on the Bright and Friendly new Zoom. And so it started as a friendship and has evolved into more than that, and so much more that she's moving her life to be close to me so that we can start a new life together.
Yeah.
I'm like, what do I say here, guys?
I mean, I think it's the point of the fact that when you're not lost in the food, you will feel compelled to make changes, to connect yourself with people who resonate with you. And I think this is true for people in other addictions. I've seen this with people with alcoholism and drug abuse.
Yes.
When you're no longer using, you don't want to be around people who are using. You want to be around people who are embracing life and who are sober. And I think I've heard of other relationships forming, through BLE, just like they form in other sobriety groups. I mean, I just think it's like you have a shared experience that's so powerful.
But I think more than that, it's more than a shared experience, also a growth mindset. Like, and that's the thing that, and it's like, and I don't want to speak for Patty. I'm not going to speak for Patty. Like she can talk for herself. But I think for me, like what I saw in her and what was so attractive to me is that she was somebody who said, I want to continue to grow in life. And that was something that I also felt like very strongly about in myself. Is like, this isn't who I am for the rest of my life. Like I'm going to continue to evolve and learn and grow
and change.
And now, and change, and coming alongside someone who can, do that with me was such a novel new concept, because I haven't had that in past relationships. So to me, it's like having someone who not only is saying like, yes, I want to be in your life, but like, I also want to like walk alongside you and grow alongside you is, and yes, has the amazing shared experience of, I don't have to worry about explaining my food addiction, because that is already, no, it's understood. It's very understood. Yeah. So, and we can, and it's funny because like, we've had this discussion before about accountability, like being your partner / spouse's accountability. And that's something we've talked about is not the job, not our job in each other's lives. Like we have other accountability outside of each other. Now, does that mean that we're not ever like talking about our program? Well, of course we are, because we live this life. But that would be like Bonnie and I saying we never talk about our programs because we're friends. Well, of course we do, even though we have shared history beyond BLE. Like we still talk about our programs. Yeah. I mean, we jokingly said before we started this podcast that when we got together, that was all we ever talked about.
Yeah. For a while, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, obviously like big life changes happening for me, but all extremely, extremely positive. Like it's been very life affirming. Like I think that's kind of the way that I've described it to people is like it's really opened up something in me that like I didn't think was possible. In life because I was so numb. I was so numb with the food before, and now I'm like, oh, there's like vibrant color in the world that I can live in and enjoy. And not that things aren't ever hard. Of course, there's hard stuff. There's always gonna be hard stuff about life, but it can be very beautiful. And yeah, it's very exciting. Changes, but a lot of changes, a lot of moving parts.
Yeah. And we're all having a lot of change, the three of us in our
Well,
lives.
that's what I was gonna say. I was
Yeah,
like,
so
and moving on to like Bonnie's got a lot going on, Robin's got a lot going on.
yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah,
Get off me.
I have
Talk
some
about
adult
something else.
kids coming back to live with us for a while, and I'm super excited that I'm going to have my grandkids nearby, but that's definitely going to change my timescape quite a bit and require some adjustment. Meagan, you got blurry.
I know I did get blurry. Let me
What?
do it a little closer.
Get unblurry. There you go. Yeah, and
Okay, Robin, you can talk while I try and figure out why I'm so blurry.
yeah, my practice is kind of exploding. I've got a wait list with my practice and, new relationship with someone that's kind of whoop whoop that's
Whoop, whoop.
going well, but
We're in love with love right now, guys. Just so everybody knows.
right, right. It's all
Yeah.
good. Yeah, but that brings so much more to all of our lives that we're juggling, and we have been having trouble getting together in person to record podcasts.
Yeah. So, which brings us to our final point
Final
of the
change.
day.
Final
Final
change.
change.
We, the three of us, are probably not probably. We are going to retire weekly episodes of On the Bright Line podcast, which is a good change. It is, I think, for all of us because I think that we still have stuff to say. I mean, I know I do. I think Robin and Bonnie do too. I just think that the grind of doing it weekly has gotten to a point where just we can't do it. We can't do it because of the busyness of our lives.
And the changes that are happening with all of us. Yeah, we've got a lot of extra. We're all getting some extra time responsibilities. Yeah,
absolutely. And so we will continue as On the Bright Line podcast to potentially do some ad hoc episodes. There's still a lot of guests we really want to have conversations with. So if you've heard from one of us and we've talked about talking to you, like don't think that that's not still a possibility in the world because it is. But all that to say, the weekly version of On the Bright Line podcast is no longer going to be continuing. Now, everything we've done up until this point, and we've done a year of episodes up to this point, guys, it's still available and out there. And I love the fact that I hear from people all the time that they can use it as a resource to help other people, either direct them to the program or, and we want to keep it out there and we want to keep that going. It's not going anywhere. It's still going to be hosted the way it's hosted. You can get it on any, podcast app. You can watch us on YouTube. We're going to continue. They're going to be housed there, but what is going to change, what the major change is going to be is that Patty and I are actually going to start a podcast. And we're going to take over the platform. Again, not everything's going to stay. The On the Bright Lines are going to stay. We're not getting rid of those. But moving forward, the weekly version is going to be a different podcast. Still me. So if you're here for me, then come on. But Bonnie and Robin will periodically show up, I guarantee, because they're still in my life and I won't let them go very far. And they still have very, very interesting things to say. But yeah, moving forward, that's what we're going to do. So look out because next week, the inaugural podcast, Dating and Bright. There you go. Just going to put the name out there for everybody. We have an Instagram. So that's the thing. Patty and I have an Instagram account together. We started it a while ago, where we've been talking just about our relationship. We've already got some, lives out there that are kind of podcasty, because we've been long distance until now. So, doing things just virtually has, we've seen each other in person, a handful of times, but we've been long distance. So yeah, that's about all ready to change. And we're going to talk about that, talk about our relationship, talk about BLE, talk about all the things. So come along for the ride if you want to stay on this journey with us. And again, Robin and Bonnie aren't going anywhere. They still live close enough to me that I can wrangle them into all kinds of shenanigans every once in a while.
Mhm.
Bonnie, Robin, do you guys have anything to say about any of this?
Change is good and change is hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say like there's grief in that, in saying, we've done this for a year and I feel like we've put out so much good content and done so much work, and that, I know every time we get together, I feel like I learn more and more, not just
Mm,
about Brightline, but about you guys and
yeah.
how we exist in the world, and, putting together all the pieces of, the journey that the three of us have had together over the, many years that we've known each other, right? And so there's joy in what will be going forward, right? Welcoming Patty into the family. But there's also sadness of like, oh,
Yeah.
we're not going to be getting together and recording and, being curious and learning together.
Yeah. Like
We still
I
can't do
second
all
all that
that. We just don't have to put it out on
every week.
Yes. Yes.
which is really honestly, guys, like that's the thing is these are your list, and I think this is what people have loved about us doing this. Is like these are the discussions we have anyway. Like we're
Yeah.
having these talks anyway.
Right.
We just haven't recorded them up until a year ago, and then we started
Yeah.
recording them. But
Yeah.
these conversations will continue, and I think that I'll make a promise that if something comes up that's really interesting that we're like, oh gosh, we need to record it, we can jump on and record it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then we can put it out. So
Yeah.
I don't want, like I said, I don't want anybody to feel like we're like going away or, like that we're going
Mhm.
to disappear. It's just going to look different because we have to take care of ourselves. I mean, at the end of the
Yeah.
day, like we
Yeah.
have to take care of ourselves, and our friendship is really important. I will say that too. Like
Mhm.
having friend time that's not just recording a podcast is
Yeah.
really important to the three of us. And I don't know about you guys, but for the last year, it feels like every time we get together, all we do is record a podcast.
Yep.
So.
I will
Yep.
say though that for the time that we've been doing this, it has strengthened my program so,
Mhm.
so much. Not everybody needs to make a podcast, but I would say when the program talks about leaning into community and getting a
Service.
buddy, I mean, this is kind of what it's really about, is like spending time with other people, really talking through how you feel about your program in depth. It
Mhm.
strengthens your program so much because it just increases your awareness and your connectedness to why you're doing it and how to do it and how you
Mhm.
feel about it. Because sometimes we just get busy in the day and you don't think about how
Yeah.
you're internally feeling about things. And just doing this together with you guys has helped me process quite a bit. So I thank
Yeah.
you. It's been great.
I agree. Obviously, major life changes that have happened for me over the last year. Like
Yeah.
it's helped me process through so many things that I just, I didn't even know that I needed to have a podcast in order to process through. So I not only thank the two of you, obviously we'll continue this on as friends and as confidants for the rest of our lives, but I'm grateful to the audience that has been listening to us and been curious and supportive. Oh my gosh, supportive and loving and all those things. So um, it's been really great. It's been really great. Robin, anything? No? Okay. Well, change is hard. Change is hard, but it's also can be really good and really exciting. So I just want everybody, again, just nobody's leaving. We're not mad at each other. Like we love each other. We're still friends. Like nothing is changing in our lives other than we're just not going to put out a weekly podcast anymore, which I think is going to be healthy for all of us. And this is part of taking care of yourself, is making changes to serve you. And Bonnie, you talked about that a little bit before, but like, sometimes things have to change to make sense. So looking forward to starting my new adventure. Bonnie and Robin will be along for that ride because they're my best friends and they don't have a choice. They have to hear everything that happens in my life. But you guys also could listen to what's going on in my life if you choose to follow along with the new podcast. So
There you go.
you can still hit us up as always on our email address on the brightlinepodcast@gmail.com. The social media, I'll keep that open. We're not going to shut that down. You can, follow us there. All the old stuff is there and the episodes aren't going anywhere. So I think that's my biggest thing. I just want to make sure people know you can continue to get these episodes and share them with people and re-listen and, whatever resonates with you, take what you need and leave the rest. So I just want to say thank you and give my gratitude to both Bonnie and Robin for going on this adventure with me.
It's been a joy.
And to everybody out there that's been listening so faithfully, because we do have a lot of faithful listeners and we appreciate you guys so much. So I think that's it. Everybody have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.
Bye.